Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.
Hello, this is Fen, well, not the Fen, not the giant werewolf Fen thing, but actually Fen, one of the writers. Named after, I know, it's a bit cliche, I know, it's a bit cliche, but I named Fenrir after Fen, who's me. Anyway, go and buy our books and stuff, and things in the description, and bye.
The Professor. I've developed OCD as a pleasant way to organize my life. An example of this is the manner in which I've arranged my desktop. No, not my computer desktop. My actual desk's desktop. I'd done it with a sort of precision that showed my deep belief in civilization. I'd done it with that precision as a definitive act of paltry defiance. The blotter was square and from 1846. The fountain pen, a delightful gold 1924 Waterman 42 safety model, was parallel to the grain of the oak, of course. The pistol, in this case, a 2025 Glock G45 Gen 6, was holstered beneath the desk within easy reach. In the case of pistols and firearms, older was not better. The more modern the better, with the old Glock. Old Glock. It was angled at 45 degrees to me, a compromise between etiquette and contingency. I was contemplating the moral superiority of symmetry when Belphastus walked in after knocking, but not being invited. The room was not ready for this. Never mind me. Lucifer had just left. The world always took a while to get back to the, whatever we were calling real, after she'd been in it. There was a definite incongruency to his barging in. I thought about shooting him, actually, just for that, Anyway, Belphastus did not so much enter the room as he sort of informed it had always been inadequate. Or at least that's probably what he thought he'd done. In my humble opinion, it was just bloody rude. I think he was offering the making of a point. He was trying to show that he didn't care for my sensibilities. Right. Well, he strode to my desk and spoiled the perfect nature of its display by picking up my ivory paper knife from my precise pattern of comfort. Before you judge me as a man who accepts the killing of pachyderms, here's a brief justification for my ownership of this item. It is a vile but undeniably beautiful thing. The item was made in 1789. As a thing of delightful craft and horror, it held a place in my heart. I know the modern sensibilities about ivory, and don't think me unsympathetic to the plight of the planet's largest known herbivore. But it would be another sin of sorts destroying this very beautiful thing, now wouldn't it? "Is this genuine?" he asked, turning it over between long, elegant fingers. He didn't have the right to have such a thing in his hands. He was not worthy. I know, I sound like a self-righteous, opinionated, what would Will's vernacular lend to this? I know, he'd be like, "Oh, by heck, you bloody self-righteous, opinionated fuck you." Yes, that adds a level of truth, doesn't it? But believe me, Belphastus really didn't deserve to hold such a thing. It grated within me. I wanted to snatch it from him like a petulant child and slap and chastise him for his ill-mannered manners. In the past, I would not have considered not doing so. But these days, civilization and decency are important things. Well, apparently. It opens envelopes, I told him evenly, as if speaking to a dolt of a child. That is its principal, theological function. Then he did it, adding more fuel to the fire of my disdain for such a man. He had the temerity to sit down, uninvited to do so, without a formal invitation to do such. This man was no friend. He could not assume such of our knowledge of each other. And worse than any of that, he sat not in the chair opposite. No, not in the chair that knew its place as a visitor's chair. No, he had the indecency to sit in my chair. My bloody chair. Oh, the uncivil bastard. To add more to my cringing discomfort, he then placed his boots on my desk. They were mud-flaked and ungently placed onto the 18th century gentleman's writing desk. Oh, my goodness me. Well, let me tell you, I was ready to behave in a very ungentlemanly manner myself at this. I inhaled deeply through my nose. I had once commanded cavalry through artillery fire without blinking. I had once negotiated with entities that measured time in the depths of civilizations. I had, on one memorable occasion, in Prague, disassembled a duke into 15 living body parts while keeping him conscious so he didn't enjoy the experience. And yet, here I was, looking at the dirt on my sublimely polished oak. My hand drifted, almost affectionately, towards the sword that was part of the mix of residents in the umbrella stand. Yes, a sword. It would suit this pig of a man to have it pierce his chest. A delightful and final addition to the man's overall look. Yes, there had been centuries when this sort of insult would have ended in a bloody finality. The law, however, had grown tediously comprehensive, even for such as me. The paperwork and the effort to clear this up would simply not be worth it. The bastard Belphastus gave me a broad smile, devoid of warmth, which brought me back into whatever this was. "You nearly had me there," he said conversationally. "You and that Nietzsche bastard, were it?" That's Nietzsche, I corrected him. His smile didn't falter. "Yeah, Nietzsche, that were it." He folded his arms behind his head before he continued trying to look the part of a relaxed man. "Admirable ruthlessness shown on your part." My jaw tightened a fraction. "I regret the imprecision," I said. "Oh, don't." Belphastus waved a hand lazily. "It were right refreshing. Most people attempt assassination with emotion. You attempted it with bloody imposition." I allowed myself the faintest inclination of the head, an acknowledgement of sort. "Well, I do try to remain professional at all times." Belphastus leaned forward slightly, boots still lying where no boots ever ought to be.
You make a bloody excellent villain, Simon. You're a right bastard.
He picked a tooth with the pinky of his right hand, which reminded me in that moment of a primate self-grooming.
Cold, patient, capable of pulling the trigger without trembling.
He continued his charge of me as the villain. I considered this. In most people's stories, I said, I regret I already am. Belphastus laughed, a harsh, uncouth sound.
Yes, see, that's what I admire. No illusions.
A silence settled in my office. A silence which had edges. I folded my hands and kicked at a scuff I noticed on the otherwise perfectly polished floor.
How?
I asked mildly.
How did you return to Earth?
I was genuinely interested and rightly confused. Belphastus examined the paper knife again, as though it might confess something interesting.
That,
he said,
is not your concern.
I smiled and nodded and waited, adding an uncomfortable silence that most English gentlemen couldn't stand. Belphastus seemed to enjoy waiting. Well, I forgot. He's not a gentleman. Belphastus seemed to find a comfort of sorts in an uncomfortable silence.
Let us simply say,
the man continued,
I have acquired a new patron.
Oh? I feigned interest.
A damned powerful one.
Belphastus added, with emphasis on the damned. I nodded, offering him the opportunity to continue with his gloat.
Very damned and very bloody powerful,
he continued. I did not alter my features. I did nothing, not even blink. I simply waited. Oh no, further, gloat. A little disappointing. He was no Bond supervillain admitting all before Bond sorted out the issue at hand. He finally continued the conversation that had temporarily stalled.
In hell,
he added. I again showed no response with another loaded pause.
It's a name you'd recognize, Simon. You don't mind me calling you Simon, do you?
I did, as a matter of fact, but I waved his question aside so he could continue and eventually get to the point. Belphastus's smile sharpened.
Simon.
His use of my name felt yucky, repugnant.
My backer is Lucifer.
He lied. A delicious bloody lie. That lie lingered in the air. I didn't move, but a spell of sorts had been broken. My hand no longer itched to grab the haft of my appropriately named bastard sword. I smiled inwardly, and outwardly for that matter. I did not announce his lie to him because it was such a clumsy one. It wasn't clever enough a lie to... I mean, Lucifer did nothing so clumsily theatrical as this. I knew her far too well. A startling thought and realization in itself in that moment. I know the devil. The devil. Too well. Yes. I should put that thought to one side for the moment. It was troubling. Part of the truth here was if the Morning Star sponsored one's return, there would be more to it. Much more. Or at least she would have given this vile man clean boots to put on my desk. She had a certain decorum about her, which, somewhat shockingly, I rather admired. Can you admire such a thing as, Should you? Should you admire such a thing as, Anyway, I returned my interest to the bastard at hand. Belphastus was doing a terrible job of testing me. I'd passed that little test with a definitive A, but he didn't have the wit to know I had. I allowed the smallest, almost invisible flicker of amusement to pass behind my eyes. "How utterly fortunate for you," I said, trying to add the right level of weight to the words that this news should bring. Belphastus tilted his head. "You don't seem much surprised, if I might say, Simon." I've learnt over the years that sometimes men and demons overstate their backing. That's all. Belphastus's smile faltered, not entirely, but enough. He was noting that he may have been caught in his moment of semantic malfeasance. Interesting, I thought. "So bloody calm," Belphastus murmured. "You're thinking about killing me, aren't you, you bastard?" Well, yes, I was, actually. I started laughing and looking at the ceiling before meeting his eyes head on. And yes, I am once again. The honesty startled him. He leaned back, boots creaking on oak, trying not to look the calm that had been rattled. "And yet, you won't, will you?" He told me in no uncertain terms, but with that little rise in tone at the end of the sentence that made it a possible question. "Will I not now?" I asked. "Because of what? The law, perhaps?" I asked, amused. My gaze drifted tenderly to the pommel of my trusty old blade. "Because," I said softly. "What?" Another silence, but this one had teeth. Belphastus stood at last, brushing the dried mud to the floor from the imposition of his boots. "You always did enjoy long games, didn't you, Simon?" "Sometimes. But then, they're the only games worth pursuing, and any game worth pursuing is worth winning," I retorted. "You've shown me your hand, Belphastus. You no longer have the ability to bluff." Anger shifted across Belphastus's gaze as he pretended to throw a hand of cards onto the desktop, showing me a sneer of pure disdain. "Oh, I'm all in," he offered. His aim was to show that he cared not one jot. It failed, delightfully. He moved towards the door. Then he paused. "You will discover soon enough who stands behind me," he quipped. "Perhaps, but remember, they only stand behind you, Belphastus. They do not protect your front. However, I look forward with great enthusiasm to the next hand and the clarification that Astaroth has you now as his fucking puppet." Belphastus smiled, all edges now restored. "Do try to destroy me properly next time, won't you, Simon?" he told me. "Oh, next time, I will make sure there's no coming back," I reassured him. The door closed. The office exhaled. I remained standing and staring at the door for several seconds. Then I tutted and carefully reached for my hanky and wiped the boot marks from my desk. I sat and went through my rituals as I thought. I first reclaimed the order of my desktop. Then I took the pistol from its spot and went over the cycle in my mind of checking that it functioned properly. And of course it did. But even after this check, something seemed not quite right. This was not enough to increase my comfort, so I walked to where my sword was stored, and I brought it over to my seat. I laid it tenderly across my thighs. Yes, it felt right there. A sword is always a sword. Once comfortable and settled, I lifted the lovely old Bakelite phone and dialed Ben's number from my mobile's contacts. This process was the equivalent of shuffling the deck of cards.
In the neon streets, living in a dream, sheets and
Ben. The corridor outside today's theatre of last things smelled faintly of antiseptic and unresolved questions. Sometimes I shot myself in my poetic language. That was pretty beautiful, wasn't it? I walked beside the wheeled stretcher as though escorting an awkward relative to a train he very much hoped would not return. This one here, would not return. Well, I hoped. Never sure in this job. He was defo dead, but that didn't always matter, I'd found. On the stretcher lay what remained of Nisha, covered, zipped, bureaucratically simplified. 2 coroners pushed, one hummed in an irritatingly imprecise tune. The other had the expression of a man who had seen too much and therefore subscribed to nothing. He was as dead as a body before him behind the eyes. I was thinking about gravity, specifically how some men seem to be drawn to death the way apples were drawn to the earth. My phone erupted into life. UK grime, loud, aggressive, totally inappropriate for this corridor at this time, which was devoted to a dignified exit. The coroner who hummed stopped humming. I tried not to make eye contact in my embarrassment by staring at the screen. Prof, it said in large letters. I felt the anger first, not sharp but old. The kind that had sedimentary layers. I did not enjoy being the man who tidied up the moral debris of so-called better men. The professor was a so-called better man. I forced a neutral expression, gestured politely to the corners and stepped through a side door marked authorised personnel only, which in most institutions means secrets happen right here. I answered, "Yeah, Prof." There was the faintest pause on the other end, the pause of a man who measured runes before speaking into them.
Are you on your own? Off speakerphone?
I wanted to answer sarcastically. "No, mate, I'm on speakerphone in the middle of Daily Mail's offices, ain't I?" I thought it, but I didn't say it. I must have left it too long, though, as silence as I daydreamed,
Benjamin,
said Simon de Montfort mildly.
I understand our mutual acquaintance has concluded
I
matters.
stifled a derisive laugh at this use of carefully chosen language and leaned against the tile wall. "He's decided not to continue," I replied, left rather abruptly.
I see.
Another pause. One could almost hear Simon arranging sentences like chess pieces.
Was the departure self-directed?
I let out a slow breath. "Yeah, technically." "He chose his moment," I continued carefully. There was no hesitation. On the other end, silence, not confusion. Simon was a man who understood the difference between truth and reportable truth.
I assume
Simon said gently.
that the appropriate documentation will reflect his decision, will it not?
"It will," I told him. "Sula's handling the paperwork." I pictured Sula already assembling the neat narrative, aligning timelines, persuading facts to sit properly in the chairs.
And will?
Simon asked. My jaw tightened. "He's off site, taking some air." Simon absorbed that.
And is he unsupervised?
I almost laughed. "Never." I lowered my voice instinctively, though there was no one close enough to hear. "I've put the usual people on him. The usual people. Men and women who did not officially exist but appeared in peripheral vision and inconvenient places. You know, observers, shepherds, occasionally retrieval specialists. I thought that prudent, I added.
Yes. Very.
Simon agreed. There was a softness to the word that might have been approval or calculation. I pushed off the wall and looked back towards the corridor where the stretcher waited. He didn't leave no note, I said.
No,
Simon replied.
I would not have expected one.
They let that settle. I rubbed up my eyes. I don't like it, I said wearily and immediately regretted the admission.
Truly, few things worth doing are likeable.
Simon said, using one of his pre-prepared platitudes. There it was, the fucking bollocking philosophy. The ancient weight of it. I imagined the professor sitting in that immaculate office, the desk perfectly civil, but in all that civility, knowing how easy and ready he was to cause violence and bloody ruin. It was always within his reach. Truth was, he was one of the monsters he always fought so hard to hide. The sad thing for me is that I knew we needed him. The sad thing for me is that I'd learnt to admire him. He was necessary in this and all the other worlds, to be honest. I had to ask. I had to. He had been doing this as far as I knew for centuries. You ever get tired of this? I asked him before I could stop myself.
Tired?
Simon considered. A sigh.
Like you wouldn't believe.
Enough to stop? A long pause.
Absolutely not.
End of sentence. No explanation of that now. Time passed. I almost smiled despite myself. Thought not. A distant metallic sound drifted through the corridor, the stretcher shifting, impatient.
Everything else contained.
Simon asked. For now.
And the cause?
I stared at the tile floor. He acted alone, I said clearly. No external influence. On paper it would read as despair, instability, a tragic end. In reality, Will's hand had been messy. But Will was only the tool. Well, correctly, the weapon, I suppose. The unthinking weapon that Simon had chosen to kill with. I understood. Simon understood.
Very well.
The professor said.
Thank you, Benjamin.
There was something almost fucking human in that gratitude. I hesitated. You called quickly.
I dislike uncertainty.
I nodded, though Simon could not see me. Yeah, I said. Me too. I ended the call before it could become something else. I stepped back into the corridor and the coroners resumed their slow procession. The humming of the man at work returned. I fell into step beside them. I hated that some things were necessary. I hated more that I understood why. And somewhere, not far away, Will was walking under watchful eyes, alive, dangerous, and carrying the kind of silence that never truly counted as solitude. The stretcher wheels squeaked once sharply, as if protesting the simplicity of a word. The word suicide. Fucking suicide, I said out loud. I shocked a passing nurse. She was so beautiful it hurt. An African Disney princess in scrubs and Crocs, carrying a little black cat. I should question the cat, but sorry, I threw out as an Englishman's habit.
No need to be,
she said, continue to walk on by me. She was right. I paused as the coroners and their cargo continued. I turned and followed her with my eyes. Nah, not like that, not in a pervy way. She stopped at the automatic doors at the end of the corridor where she put the ID on a lanyard to the sensor to open them. The doors opened to the roar of flames and the screams of the wretched. I moved my eyes from that, whatever the fuck that was, to hers. She winked and stepped into the maelstrom as doors closed behind her.
Detective Johnson.
One of the men pushing the gurney brought me back to you know what? I've not got a clue what way out is anymore, not these days, but they brought me back. Oh, sorry. I again threw it out there for no reason. I started back on Nisha's journey.
Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.